Hey guys, tonight we step into the raw, rugged world of a Viking fishing village where the days are cold, the fish are colder, and the mornings start long before any sane person would want to be conscious. Imagine a place where the sky is gray. More often than not, the wind cuts through every layer you wear, and the ocean isn't just a background, it's your boss. Your pantry, and occasionally your mortal enemy. You're not a warrior, not a raider. Nope, you're just a poor soul waking up in a damp, smoky longhouse at the edge of a fjord. And trust me, you probably won't survive this dot. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from? And what time is it for you? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to the sound of snoring, loud, wet, and uncomfortably close. It's pitch dark, but your body knows the drill. No sunrise needed, just the weight of routine and the smell of smoke clinging to everything. You blink, your eyes sting, and your back is sore from sleeping. On straw packed over lumpy wood slats, your feet are cold. Actually, everything is cold. You curl your toes under the ragged wool of your blanket and immediately regret someone spilled fish oil nearby, and it seeped into the bedding. You sit up. You try not to breathe too deeply. The inside of the longhouse is a living, breathing thing, murmurs, rustling, the occasional thud as someone rolls over in their sleep. A smoky fire in the center has burned down to smoldering embers. It did little to warm the space overnight, but it kept the wolves out and the sea mist at bay. Sort of. There's no such thing as your space here. Your body occupies a narrow slice of shared family sleeping quarters. On one side is a cousin who grinds his teeth all night. On the other, a toddler who wakes up screaming because she dreamed about sea serpents again. That's not superstition. Here, sea serpents are just Tuesday stories. You swing your legs out and wince. The wooden floor is rough and frozen. You grab your tunic, a stiff, itchy thing, and throw it over your head. Your fingers fumble with the leather ties. Even they feel colder than usual today. Outside, a rooster crows. He's late, or you're early. Either way, it's still dark, and the air inside your nose freezes just slightly as you inhale. You don't own shoes, exactly. Just some stitched leather wrappings lined with straw. Good enough for now. You push open the creaking wooden door, and the wind punches you in the face. It tastes like salt, smoke, and faint regret. The village is already stirring. A few silhouettes pass between huts, men heading to boats, women to wells. Everyone moving fast, nobody speaking much. You hear a splash. Someone just fell on the slippery rocks again. Happens every morning. You chuckle. Then slip and nearly join them. Your job is simple. You fish or you don't eat. But first, you need to eat to fish. You trudge toward the food hut, a smoke-blackened lean to where yesterday's leftovers cling to hope. The ground squelches beneath your feet. Frozen seaweed makes weird little popping sounds as you walk. You duck into the hut and immediately gag. The smell of fermented herring hits you like a slap. There's a clay bowl with what might generously be called breakfast. Last night's boiled oats, now chilled into something between porridge and regret. There's also a few chunks of dried fish, probably herring, maybe something worse. You? Grab a piece. It's tough, chewy, salty enough to pickle your tongue. No one in this village has ever heard of a dentist, and your teeth let you know they're not amused. You sit on an overturned barrel and gnaw your way through the morning ritual. Outside, the sea crashes endlessly. Somewhere down the hill, a dog barks, or possibly a seal. In this light, you honestly can't tell the difference. A boy, probably 10, maybe 12, rushes by with a net twice his size. He gives you a look that says, "Hurry up, lazy bones," and you suddenly remember that today is your turn to help row. You sigh. Chew faster. The fish doesn't get any tastier. Historians still argue whether the early Viking coastal settlements were more communal or family-based in structure, but from where you're sitting, with someone else's elbow in your side, and no privacy since the moment you woke up, it's safe to say you're living in a highly shared society. Outside again. The wind has picked up. You head toward the beach, dodging carts, children, and one very angry goose. The sea is silver under the pre-dawn sky. Boats are being pushed into the surf-long, narrow things that look elegant, until you remember they're mostly patched wood. Rope and optimism. You spot your crew. 7 men, all of them already grumpy. One wears a sealskin hat that smells like every bad decision ever made in a sauna. Another has a nose so red it could guide a sleigh. None of them speak as you approach. They just gesture toward the boat like, "Get in, you late sea rat." You obey. The boat rocks as you step in. You take your place at the oar. It's carved pine, heavy, and worn smooth by too many calloused hands. You grip it, brace your feet, and prepare to row your body into misery. One of the elders shouts something unintelligible, probably encouragement, more likely just row faster. The tide's going out. The sky is finally bleeding from gray to pale blue, and you're about to spend the next several hours making your arms feel like jelly while your butt goes numb on a damp wooden bench. But hey, at least there's no sea monsters yet. You've been rowing for 20 minutes, and you're already questioning every life decision that brought you here. Your arms burn, your fingers are stiff, and your lower back is threatening to file a complaint. The sea's calm for now, but the cold air slices through your clothes and settles into your bones like it's paying rent. The boat creaks with each pull, rocking rhythmically as you and the rest of the crew dig into the water. No one talks, not because they're conserving energy, but because conversation is for people who aren't already suffering in silence. Your breath comes out in little clouds that vanish almost instantly into the coastal mist. Your job right now is to help get the boat out beyond the shallows, where the fish are supposed to be biting. Supposed to be. Sometimes they're there. Sometimes they're just somewhere else. And sometimes the gods are feeling petty, and no one catches anything but a cold. You glance behind you. The coastline's shrinking, dotted with black-roofed longhouses and smoke drifting from chimney holes. A few other fishing boats are out, silhouetted against the grayish horizon like cautious ghosts. Someone sneezes violently beside you. It's Bjorn, the guy with the sealskin hat. He wipes his nose on his sleeve without breaking rhythm. "It's the salt air," he mutters, like that explains away the dripping mess. He smells like damp fur and ancient fish, and you're not convinced he even notices anymore. You row past a large flat rock jutting from the sea, shaped eerily like a sleeping whale. Local legend says a sea spirit lives beneath it. The kids call it Nenjud's bed. According to folklore, if you fish too close, you risk waking the old sea god. And no one wants to be on Njurd's bad side before breakfast. Historians still argue whether the Viking belief in sea deities like Njord was more symbolic than literal, but here people leave carved shells as offerings on the shore, just in case. You wouldn't call it superstition exactly. More like, well, insurance that another hour passes. Your stomach growls, and you realize that one piece of cold fish and a clump of oat paste was never going to be enough fuel for a full morning of manual labor. You shift your weight and your spine cracks like an old door hinge. The wooden bench you're sitting on has seen better decades. Suddenly the boat slows. Someone drops anchor. You blink, grateful for the break, until you remember what comes next. Fishing. Real Viking fishing doesn't involve rods or fancy reels. You're working with thick nets, often made from hemp or linen, painstakingly knotted and weighted with stones. They smell like every fish that's ever died, and they're about as easy to handle as a wet bear. You and the others grab your section of net and begin the clumsy ballet of casting. The technique is simple. Unroll, toss, pray dot your fingers go. Numb almost immediately as the cold water splashes over the side. You try not to scream when something slimy brushes your wrist. Probably seaweed. Hopefully seaweed. Please let it be seaweed. There's a sharp jerk on the line, and for a fleeting moment you feel victorious. Then the whole net yanks forward, and you nearly tumble headfirst into the drink. Whatever's on the other end is big, or angry, or both. You and Bourne heave together, grunting like disgruntled oxen. At last the net breaks the surface, and inside, flopping madly, are 2 fat cod, a tangle of crabs, and something that looks like a boot, but is probably a rotted piece of driftwood. You'll take it. While the others secure the catch, you sit back and rub your sore hands. The rope has carved little red lines into your palms. You'll have calluses by the end of the week if you last that long. A light drizzle begins to fall. Of course it does. You squint up at the sky and mutter, "Seriously?" The sky responds with more drizzle. Another net goes in. Another hour passes. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed. Somewhere along the way, someone farts loudly and unapologetically. No one laughs. It's too cold for humor now. And then, just as the sun rises enough to cast a sliver of pale light across the waves, a gull swoops overhead and drops a gift. Right on your hood. You freeze. You do not scream. You simply remove your hood, stare at the offending splatter, and sigh the sigh of a man who knows things will only get worse from here. "Good luck," says Bourne flatly. It's a blessing from the gods. He doesn't even try to suppress the smirk. You wipe it off with a piece of moss, which frankly smells worse than the bird poop. A bit later, someone spots seals bobbing near the rocks. That's either a good sign, more fish, or a bad one, depending on the mood of the day. According to an old village tale, seals are the transformed lovers of sea witches, cursed to swim the coast until someone lifts the spell. You try not to make eye contact, just in case. Another hour. More rowing. More rain. At some point, you Stop feeling your toes. The sun's fully up now, though fully is generous. It's more like someone dimmed the world to a foggy beige. Still, it's enough light to spot the other boats scattered across the water. Most are manned by neighbors you vaguely recognize. One of them waves. You consider waving back, but lack the energy and emotional bandwidth. Finally, the elder calls it. Time to head in. No one cheers, but everyone rows with a bit more gusto. Land means food, or at least less wind. You catch a final glimpse of Jude's bed as you pass the big rock again. A seagull sits on top, squawking like it owns the sea. You're too tired to care dot as the boat glides toward the shore. You brace yourself, because next comes gutting the fish. And the only thing worse than catching cold, slippery cod is opening them up. But first, land is good. The moment your boots, or what passes for boots, hit the rocky shore, your legs buckle slightly. Land feels weird after hours of being tossed gently, and then not so gently, by the sea. You try to walk, but your knees perform a sad little wobble. That makes you look like a baby deer discovering gravity. Nobody helps you. They're too busy dragging the boat up the beach and securing it with thick rope to a rusted iron, ring hammered into a boulder decades ago. Some things in this village last forever: ironwork, gossip, and bad knees from fishing. You're directed wordlessly toward the gutting area, which is just a polite way of saying big flat rocks near the fish racks where the stench goes too. Die. This is where the real magic happens. If your idea of magic involves slime, knives, and the constant threat of slipping in something you'll regret, you take your place beside a pile of freshly caught cod. They're still twitching. One of them is staring at you. You stare back, feeling only a vague mix of guilt and hunger. The knife they hand you is dull. Not butter knife dull, worse. It's like trying to carve a turkey with a spoon. You press the blade into the fish's belly and push down. Nothing happens. You try again, harder this time. The fish responds by sliding sideways off the rock and into your lap. "Welcome to gutting," says a woman to your right. She's about 60, missing 3 fingers, and works faster than should be legally possible. She slices open a fish with one swipe, scoops out the innards with a spoon-like motion of her hand, and tosses the guts into a wooden bucket that smells like Satan's lunchbox. You watch her, jaw slightly agape. She glances over. "First time? You?" "Nod," she shrugs. "You'll get used to it, or you'll quit, or you'll die. Anyway, keep going." Historians still argue whether the average Viking coastal villager had designated roles for gutting and processing fish, or whether it was more of an everyone pitches in until their hands go numb kind of arrangement. From your current position elbow deep. In fish viscera, it's clearly the latter. You eventually get the hang of it. Sort of. You slice, scoop, toss. Slice, scoop, toss. It's rhythmic, meditative in a slightly traumatic way. The smell no longer punches you in the face. It simply becomes part of your soul. Your hands are red and slick. Your wrists ache. Your shoulders feel like they're being peeled. You pause for a moment and wipe your brow on your sleeve. That was a mistake. You just smeared fish guts across your forehead. No one tells you. They just stare. You're officially the village art project now. Occasionally someone shouts that a seal has snatched a drying fish from the racks again. That triggers a brief burst of activity. 3 kids run off with sticks and shouting, the local seal patrol. No one expects them to actually catch the animal. It's more about the principal dot at one point. A man walks by casually gnawing on a dried herring like it's a snack bar. He offers you one. You politely decline. He shrugs and eats yours too. You glance at the fish pile. It has not gotten any smaller. If anything, the fish are multiplying when you look away. You suspect sorcery. The woman next to you 3-finger Frades, as you've now mentally named her, lets out a satisfied grunt. This one's got roe, she says, squeezing a translucent sac from inside a large cod. Means the gods are happy today. You nod, unsure what roe is supposed to mean for your personal destiny. She continues, back in my day, we'd rub the roe on our faces to keep the sea spirits away. You try not to look horrified. She sees your expression and cackles. Relax, we don't do that anymore. We use goose fat now. Less messy. Ah yes, goose fat. So modern dot by late morning, the sun is higher in the sky, meaning it's now a sort of weak yellow smear barely managing to peek through the clouds. The fish are mostly processed, and the racks are filling up with salted fillets drying in the cold air. They'll stay out all day, sometimes longer, as long as the birds don't steal them, or the seals, or that one dog everyone pretends not to see doing it. You stretch your back and wince. Your entire body is a mosaic of soreness. Your hands are raw. Your nails are caked in something that might have once been an eyeball. You consider crying, but that would require energy you no longer possess. Someone walks by and pats you on the shoulder. Good work, they say, though their tone suggests they're impressed you're still upright. Not that you're any good. You nod, then realize you're still holding a fish knife. You drop it before anyone thinks you're getting ideas. There's a break now, a chance to clean up. You trudge toward the water and dunk your hands into the icy sea. It stings like betrayal. You scrub as best you can. Your knuckles are pink. Your skin smells like marine despair. Still, it's something dot as you walk back up the slope toward the village center. A child runs past you, waving a stick and pretending it's a sword. He shouts something about slaying a sea dragon. You smile weakly. At least someone still has energy. Or imagination. You pass a group of elders sitting on a carved bench by the longhouse, muttering about the size of today's catch and whether the upcoming winter will be mild or horrific. There's no in-between. One of them glances at you and snorts. You've got fish gut in your hair. You nod solemnly. It's a look, he grunts. You'll survive, maybe. You believe him, maybe. The clouds start to clump together above you, thickening like curdled milk in the sky. That's never a good sign. The older villagers glance upward and mumble things like, "Ma, she's turning," or smells like Nerd's moods again. You don't know what that means exactly, but you've learned to dread it anyway. You barely have time to shake the sea stink off your hands before someone shouts, "Storm." Not a storm, just storm. As if the weather itself has a name and a personality, and it probably does. You wouldn't be surprised if people here left offerings to wind. The sea was calm an hour ago. Now it's rising like it heard someone insult its mother. Waves crash harder. Wind howls through the narrow inlets of the fjord, and gulls take off in spirals like frantic scribbles across the sky. You haven't even eaten lunch yet. You're hustled, shoved into motion. The boats have to be lashed. Down tighter, the drying racks covered, and the children who wander too close to the cliffs. Someone better find them fast. You grab a coil of rope and make your way toward the boat you helped row earlier. It's already rocking dangerously in the surf, jerking against its moorings like a furious sea creature trying to break free. You and 3 others begin wrestling it further inland, dragging the heavy hull over seaweed-slicked stones as the wind turns your face into a frozen prune. Someone yells instructions in Old Norse lauder, as if shouting will make your muscles work better. You have no idea what they said, but the gesture seems to mean pull harder or we all drown later. By the time the boat's secure, your hands are raw again, and your shoulders have entered the bargaining stage of muscle fatigue. Then the rain begins, sideways. Not the polite kind of rain that taps your shoulders and apologizes for being here. No, this is slap you in the face, sting your eyes, remember who's boss kind of rain. Cold, needle-like, and deeply personal. You duck into a small shed, if a collection of boards and wishes can be called that, where a few others are. Hiding out. Someone passes you a scrap of wool. You try to dry your face with it, but it's already soaked. You wipe one cheek and somehow come away wetter than before. Historians still argue whether the rapid shifts in weather along the Norse coast were common enough to influence settlement design or just seasonal hazards. But from your spot in this rattling hut, surrounded by dripping, grumbling villagers, you'd bet your last fish spine that they factored heavily into daily life. You look through the gap in the boards. The sea has gone full apocalypse mode. Waves smash against the rocks like they're mad. The land exists. Thunder rumbles in the distance, a low growl like Thor clearing his throat. Next to you, a man in his 50s casually carves something into a bit of driftwood. He hums under his breath, unbothered by the chaos outside. You glance at his carving. It's a sea serpent coiled around a boat, with little screaming stick-figured people inside. Comforting. He catches you looking and grins. Last time we had weather like this, he says, we lost half the goat pens and someone's grandmother. Nobody was sure which was the bigger tragedy. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. The goats didn't snore. Outside, the storm continues to roar. Inside, it smells like wet socks, pine resin, and defeat. Someone sneezes loudly. Then again. Then again. Everyone instinctively leans away. Too late. A woman mumbles a prayer to Jir, the god of the ocean. She leaves a bit of dried fish in the corner of the hut, which you're pretty sure violates every food safety regulation ever written. But hey, maybe it works. Then, as abruptly as it began, the worst of it starts to ease. The thunder drifts farther away, the rain softens into a drizzle, and the wind quiets to a low hiss. It's not sunny by any means, but it's less biblical fury and more damp Tuesday. You emerge slowly like a soggy groundhog, unsure if it's safe. Around you, the village is still standing barely. A few fish racks have collapsed. Some drying lines have snapped and sent their prized catch flopping into the mud. One hut lost its thatch roof entirely. A woman stands next. To it, arms crossed, muttering about last time this happened, and should have replaced the roof last solstice. You help right a broken rack. Several fish have landed in the grass and are now covered in mud, feathers, and one very confused frog. You pick them up anyway. Waste not, starve not. At some point, someone hands you a wooden mug with something warm in it. It's herbal broth water, a handful of herbs, and possibly a boiled root or two. No salt, no flavor. But it's warm, and right now, that's basically magic. You sip it slowly, leaning against a beam that's only half collapsed. Everything aches. Your skin is cold. Your fingers barely function. But the storm is passing, and you're still here. Not. Everyone is down the beach. A group has gathered. They're pulling something out of the water, someone. A young man, maybe 15, pale and limp as seaweed. His father kneels beside him, pressing his forehead to the boy's chest. Someone starts murmuring an old song, not a mourning one, something older, a rhythm for returning. You step back. You don't know the words, but the weight of the moment presses into your ribs. After a few long breaths, the boy coughs. Salt water sprays from his mouth. People cheer quietly. Someone cries. The father lifts him like he weighs nothing and carries him toward the healer's hut. You watch them go, and for a strange moment, you feel heavier than you felt all day. The sea gave him back. But it doesn't always. You walk away slowly. The drizzle continues. Your clothes cling to you like damp parchment. Someone offers you a bit of dried seaweed to chew. You accept it. It tastes like old rope, and yet, somehow, it's oddly comforting. The village smells different after a storm, part seawater, part churned-up earth, and a generous helping of wet wool. You're still chewing that miserable strip of seaweed, which now tastes like guilt wrapped in kelp, as you make your way back. To the gutting area. It's worse now. The rain turned the already slippery slope into a chaotic mudslide. One unfortunate villager has lost a shoe in the muck and is digging for it like it's buried treasure. Another has simply given up and is barefoot, muttering Norse curses under his breath with every SQU, ice H. Your job isn't done. The catch still needs cleaning. The fish, of course, didn't care that there was a storm. They're just dead, wet, heavy, and now partially coated in gravel. You're assigned to the dirty work. The gut buckets need to be emptied. A charming task, really. Each one is a wooden pail filled with a mysterious blend of fish guts, slime, seawater, and unidentifiable organic despair. You carry 2 at a time down toward the edge of the cliffs, where the tide has already started to recede. There's a particular spot everyone dumps this foul brew. It's kind of the village's unofficial offering to whatever sea god they're trying not to offend this week. It's not ceremonial. It's just very, very gross. You dump the first bucket and immediately gag. The stench is a physical force. It slaps you like an offended Viking grandmother. You drop the second one a little farther away and back off fast, slipping a little but saving yourself with a quick grab at a moss-covered rock. You're rewarded for your efforts with a round of applause from 3 old men watching from above. One of them shouts, "Now you're really part of the village," with a laugh that wheezes like a broken bellows. Historians still argue whether gut waste was always disposed of in the same place or simply wherever was least likely to offend anyone important. Either way, this system seems less about tradition and more about shared suffering. You return to the racks. The fish are finally strung up and drying again, this time with extra rope to prevent another gust from sending them flying into the fjord. You're handed a wooden rake and shown how to tease the air through the racks. It's supposed to help the fish dry more evenly. It mostly feels like you're just shooing the wind, but fine. You rake gently, trying to look like you know what you're doing. A group of children nearby are daring each other to lick one of the drying fish. One of them actually does and immediately regrets every choice he's made in life. You relate to him on a spiritual level. After a while, a woman with 2 braids and the most intimidating eyebrows you've ever seen calls you over. She says it's time to prep the bones. You didn't know this was a thing. Turns out, Viking villagers don't waste anything, not even fish bones. They use them for tools, pins, combs, and occasionally as barter when times are tight. You're handed a long, bony spine and told to start separating it into usable chunks. The knife is sharp finally, and the spine is brittle. It cracks easily under pressure. You snap it into sections, careful not to cut yourself, but the splinters still dig into your hands like angry reminders that gloves haven't been invented yet. As you work, the woman tells you stories about a man who once made an entire fishing hook set from cod ribs, about a child who swallowed a fish eye and claimed he could see underwater for a week, about a neighbor who lost his toe when a frozen fish fell on it. You're not sure how much of it is true, but you find yourself nodding anyway, just grateful to listen instead of moving for a few minutes. A man nearby is making something from fish skin. He stretches it over a frame and scrapes it smooth with a flat rock. He says he's making pouches, or shoes, or possibly both. Everything here seems to have 2 uses, one practical, one uncomfortable. The hours stretch on. By now your hands are sore, your knees ache, and you're pretty sure a small fish scale has embedded itself in your eyebrow. But oddly, you're settling into the rhythm. Snap, slice, stack, breathe. Snap, slice, stack, breathe. There's a kind of peace to it. Or maybe your brain is just too exhausted to protest anymore. Lunch is called, though no bell rings, just a low horn blast from the longhouse. Everyone starts heading uphill. You join the tide of tired bodies, your stomach reminding you that you've eaten roughly 2 mouthfuls of seaweed and 1 very chewy prayer of dried fish all day. The longhouse is warmer now. The fire has been restoked. Smoke curls lazily up through the central hole in the roof. Wooden bowls are passed around. Yours contains something that might be soup. It's gray, vaguely green, and smells like boiled moss, which it may well be. You eat it anyway. It tastes complicated. There's something chewy in it, possibly sea lettuce, possibly regret, but the warmth seeps into your bones, and for that you're grateful. A boy passes around a jug of something fermented, likely mead, possibly vinegar, definitely stronger than water. You take a sip and nearly choke, but then your toes tingle and you feel your shoulders unclench for the first time since you woke up. Someone tells a joke about a fisherman, a priest, and a goat. You don't catch all the words, but the room erupts in laughter, so you laugh too. You sit there, bowl in hand, legs shaking slightly, body coated in a crust of salt and work, and you realize it's barely midday. Lunch fades out not with a bang, but a slow, collective groan as bodies rise stiffly from benches and low stools. Your legs try to protest, but they're outvoted. You wobble upright with your bowl still clutched in one hand, not quite sure whether to finish slurping the strange moss thing left at the bottom or to respectfully release it back to the earth. You go with the second option. Outside, the clouds have rearranged themselves into that classic Scandinavian mood, brooding but quiet. There's no sun exactly, just the idea of it somewhere beyond the gloom. A few patches of blue sky peek through like cautious strangers. Now that the immediate chaos of the morning has passed, the village begins to settle into its afternoon rhythm, which means it's time for the elders to gather, complain, and adjudicate whatever petty disputes have been simmering since the last tide. You didn't think this was part of your job, but apparently you're being invited to watch more like conscripted. One of the older women drags you toward the central square with surprising strength for someone shaped like a bundled rug. You'll learn something, she says, and if not, you'll at least sit still for once. You obliged at the meeting. Takes place on a stone platform barely 2 steps wide, in front of a half-circle of carved benches. The elders' 4 men and 3 women sit there like weary statues. One has a beard so long it's braided into his belt. Another wears a fur hat even though it's not cold enough to justify it, which makes you suspicious. They begin the proceedings in Old Norse, but most of the village speaks a muddled blend of languages anyway. You catch enough to get the gist. First up, the case of the missing fish. A young woman named Ira claims her neighbors stole a prized dried cod off her rack yesterday while she was inside tending to her goat's infected hoof. Her goat, by the way, is present and bleats mournfully as if offering testimony. The accused, a wiry man named Halder, denies everything. Says his rack is right next to hers, and any fish he took was on his side. Ira counters with an angry wave. Of a fish bone she claims is the exact size of the missing cod. Halder rolls his eyes. The goat bleats again. You're riveted. After some back and forth that includes heated pointing, a reference to someone's uncle's cousin's fishing habits, and a lot of nodding from other villagers who clearly just want lunch again, the elders rule that Halder must give Ira a piglet in exchange for the fish. Historians still debate whether pigs were used as compensation in minor disputes or only for more serious offenses. But here the logic is clear. Cod is valuable. Pride is more valuable. And a piglet is the perfect balance of both food and inconvenience. The villagers murmur their approval. Ira smiles smugly. Halder sighs and trudges off toward the animal. Pens. Next up, fence line fiasco. Apparently 2 households are arguing over 3 feet of turf near the communal drying racks. One of them wants to use it for extra fish lines. The other has been letting their chickens roam there and claims historical use. A third party interjects and says they saw spirits dancing on the spot during the last solstice, so technically no one should claim it. This is taken seriously. One elder closes her eyes and mutters something to the sky. Another rubs a smooth stone he keeps in his pocket. Finally they declare the turf neutral and say it must remain spirit land. No fish, no chickens. Definitely no dancing. You don't know whether to laugh or take notes. And then, just when you think the fun is over, someone brings up the case of the echoing outhouse, but you're pulled away before you can hear the verdict. Apparently, it's your turn to fetch salt from the communal storehouse. This seems like a demotion. The salt hut is small, musty, and smells like every damp cellar you've ever been warned about. Inside, barrels line the walls, filled with salt harvested from the sea in great steaming pans during summer. This stuff is precious, not just for flavor, which you wouldn't know from lunch, but for preservation. Without salt, the village has no way to keep fish edible through the dark months. You're given a little wooden scoop and a bag made of tightly woven fish skin. It's slick, slightly fishy. You try not to think about it. Careful, says the man overseeing the storehouse. He eyes you like someone watching a bear juggle knives. Drop a scoop, and you lick it up. You nod slowly. Message received. Salt. Retrieved. You're sent to the back of the longhouse, where a group of women are preparing to cure the rest of the morning's catch. This involves layering fish in barrels with salt between each one. It's kind of like making a lasagna. If lasagna hated you, you learn the pattern: fish, salt, fish, salt. Then press it down with a flat stone. Repeat. The stone is cold. The fish are cold. Your hands are cold. But your spirit? Also cold. One of the women hums a tune, an old lullaby about a sailor who turned into a seal and forgot his own name. Another sharpens a knife with a piece of shale, the rhythmic shirk SHR-RK, keeping time with the waves outside. Someone asks you where you're from. You start to explain, but the woman with the knife cuts you off with a knowing smile. Don't matter, you're here now. You get the feeling that's not just a comment on geography. You're halfway through your third barrel when someone yells about the goat again. Apparently it's wandered onto spirit turf again. You're starting to think that Viking cuisine is a prank, a long, slow prank passed down through generations with a completely straight face. It's midday now, and someone has enthusiastically declared that it's time for the feast. You're intrigued. You dare to hope. Maybe a roast? A stew? Nope. The midday feast is a wobbly bowl of seaweed soup, a generous handful of dried fish, and something that was very confidently introduced as a root cake. You're not sure which root. You're not sure which cake. You're handed your share in a hollowed-out wooden bowl that smells vaguely of smoke, mold, and old onions. Everyone sits on the ground or low stools, gathered in an uneven circle under the wide overhang of the longhouse roof. The floor is hard-packed, earth stamped flat by 1,000 years of weary footsteps and the occasional goat. You take your first bite. The seaweed soup is exactly what it sounds like. Hot seawater flavored with chopped kelp, limp onion, and the sadness of the North Sea. There may be a mussel in it, possibly a rock. Either way, you chew it carefully and swallow with the determination of someone who knows they're not getting anything better today. The dried fish is chewy, as always. It's been cured to the point where it could double as roofing material. You gnaw on it like an obedient dog. Someone nearby dips theirs in the soup to soften it. You try this. It works. Slightly. It also makes the soup worse. The root cake is, well, it's mostly dirt. Sweetened dirt, maybe with the texture of undercooked bark. But you finish it because your stomach is demanding calories, not quality. And here's the kicker. Everyone else seems perfectly content. The man next to you, whose name you still haven't caught, slaps his knee and says, best batch in a fortnight. You nod solemnly, trying to keep your eyes from wandering dot across the fire. Someone starts singing. It's a slow tune, sung in a low voice about a fisherman who fell in love with a selkie and got dragged into the sea. Classic romance. The villagers nod along, their mouths full of soup, as though they've all dated selkies at some point and understand the hazards. Historians still debate how frequently selkie legends were shared among coastal villages, or whether the tales served more as warnings against marrying outside the fjord. Regardless, the songs are serious business here. No one jokes during selkie verses. You try to relax, but your muscles keep twitching from the morning's labor, and also from the soup. There might have been something still moving in it. Best not to dwell. After the singing dies down, a few of the elders begin telling stories of better times, which, based on the content, means slightly fewer sea disasters. One woman recalls the winter the fjord froze, and people skated on it using animal bones strapped to their feet. Someone else interrupts and says that was a different fjord, and besides it was probably cursed. They argue, briefly. Then someone farts loudly, and the conversation veers into weather again. You're almost finished with your soup when a dog appears out of nowhere and sits beside you. It's muddy, shaggy, and smells like rotten shellfish, but it gazes at you with the patience of a monk. You offer it the last bit of root cake. It sniffs it, then sneezes and walks away. That hurts a little. You lean back and stretch your legs. Your calves scream. Your stomach grumbles in confusion. But the fire is warm, the wind has calmed, and for a fleeting moment you feel something close to comfort, until the elder with the braids points at you and says, "You're coming with us to the market." You blink. Market? She nods, already gathering her pack. Every fourth day we go to the coast, time to trade. You are apparently part of the is now. You stand up, knees cracking like firewood, and follow a group of 4 villagers down the worn path toward the edge of the village, where the land rises into craggy cliffs and the sea winks far below. One of them carries a bundle of fish bones. Another has 2 strips of cured seal meat. The elder woman carries a satchel that clinks ominously. You carry, well, nothing yet. But that won't last. The path winds steeply down toward a rocky bay, where other coastal dwellers set up rough stalls, barrels, blankets, upside-down crates, all the makings of a pop-up Viking market. It's louder than the village, full of greetings, haggling, and the occasional goat screaming into the void. You pass one man selling hand-carved cones made from walrus tusk, another offering fermented shark in sealed clay pots. You're advised not to open them, and someone who has inexplicably dyed wool in 6 different shades of brown. You're put in charge of your village's fish tray, which is really just a plank with 3 dried cod, a curious crab, and a piece of driftwood someone insists is shaped like a hammer. You sit cross-legged beside it and try to look serious. A woman in a fur cloak stops by and eyes your tray. She pokes the crab. It does not respond. She trades you a bone needle and a lump of beeswax for the crab and the smallest cod. You nod, stunned, and realize you've just completed your first Viking transaction. Historians still argue how standardized Viking markets were, or if barter was more improvisational, based on the fact that someone nearby just traded a comb for a goose feather. You're leaning toward improvised chaos. As the market winds down, you gather your earnings, a few tools, some cloth, and a jar of something that smells like anchovy regret. You climb back up the cliff with the others, hearts lighter, pouches heavier. Back in the village, you help distribute the goods. The cloth goes to the weaver. The tools go to the boat crew. The jar of fermented stuff is placed near the hearth with a reverent nod. You're not sure what it is, but someone will definitely eat it later and pretend to enjoy it. You sit by the fire again. Someone hands you a new bowl. You pray it's not more seaweed. It's hot ale. You sip. You exhale. Then the dog returns and curls up beside you, forgiving your earlier offense. You scratch its ears and whisper, "Yeah, I get it. It's a lot." It licks your hand once, then dozes off. The afternoon light turns gold, or, well, a sort of golden gray, which is about as bright as it gets this far north. Shadows stretch across the village like tired limbs, and the marketplace is quieted into a slow shuffle of villagers returning, with bundles, baskets, and the occasional story you suspect has already grown 3 details too many since it happened 2 hours ago. You're still petting the dog, who has decided you're acceptable company now, when someone tosses a wool cloak over your shoulders and says, "Come on." The market wasn't the end of your day. Of course not. That would be too easy. Your next stop, the coastal gossip ring, better known as the alehouse. It's not really a house, more like a lean-to built up against a large rock with a cloth flap, as a door and enough smoke inside to pickle your lungs. But it serves as the unofficial exchange for news, trade chatter, matchmaking rumors, and light character assassination. You duck inside and are immediately slapped in the face with the scent of sour ale, wood smoke, wet wool, and sweat. It's oddly comforting. There's no bar, no stools, no menu. Just barrels, benches, and mugs passed around freely, or at least semi-freely, depending on who brought what to the last communal brewing session. You're handed a mug of something that smells like someone dropped a pinnacone in fermented honey. You drink it. It burns, then it soothes. Then it loops back and burns again, just for fun. Around you, conversations bloom and overlap. 2 fishermen argue about whose net design is better. A woman loudly claims her cousin saw a sea hag combing her hair on the rocks last week. A man swears he traded with an English monk who offered him a tiny bell in exchange for salted fish and his eternal soul. Nobody's quite sure who got the better deal. Historians still debate how formal Viking social spaces were if these gatherings functioned as town halls, taverns, or therapy. Here they're all 3. You get the sense that anything important happens in this smoky chaos. Alliances made, grudges aired, secrets half spilled. You're drawn into a game involving carved knuckle bones. The rules are vague and possibly made up on the spot, but it involves throwing bones into a circle and then yelling dramatically when they land oddly. You lose 3 rounds in a row. The dog beside you wins the 4th by sneezing on someone's hand mid-throw. There's laughter, real laughter. Not just tired chuckles or polite exhalations, but the deep-bellied, unexpected kind that cuts through the day's fatigue. You find yourself laughing too, and just like that, you're part of the rhythm. Someone hands you a pouch of smoked shellfish. You pretend to be honored. You don't eat them. A woman named Brynhild Barefoot red cheek, and missing one eyebrow, pulls up a stool beside you and starts asking questions. Where you're from, what your clan is, whether you're good. With sheep, you're not sure if that last one is practical or romantic. You nod cautiously. She grins. Don't worry, everyone lies the first time. Eventually, the ale runs out. People drift away in pairs or small groups, conversations trailing like threadbare cloaks. You help clean up kicking ashes over the fire, tossing empty cups into a pile, and brushing out the wool mats for the next time the village needs to debate who actually owns that one-eyed chicken. Back outside, the sky has shifted again, darker now, speckled with stars fighting through the cloud cover. A faint wind carries the scent of brine and distant pine trees. The village is quieter, more still. You're walking back toward the longhouse when you hear the low thump of a drum. You stop. Not far away, near the edge of the water, a small circle of villagers has gathered around a fire pit. Someone's beating a hand drum slow, steady like the pulse of the earth. You approach cautiously, Dot. It's story time. The circle makes room for you, without words. You sit, warming your hands, the firelight flickering across tired faces and braided hair. An older man begins to speak, not loudly, but with the kind of voice that pulls attention like gravity. He tells a story about a boy who followed a silver fish into the deep fjord and found an underwater kingdom made of glass and coral. The boy stayed for 7 years, returned with a golden beard, and never aged again. Some say he became a seal. Others say he lives on the cliffs, watching. A woman follows with a tale of the night the moon got stuck in the sky, and the tide wouldn't. Come in. The villagers panicked, lit lanterns, and sent messages in driftwood boats until a whale sang it free. There's no script, no ceremony, just shared wonder and the crackle of fire. Occasionally someone throws in a funny detail or adds a bit of dialogue, and the whole group chuckles, reshaping the tale in real time. Historians still argue whether Norse oral storytelling was meant for pure entertainment or held deeper ritual significance. Here, under the stars, surrounded by smoke and salt and community, it feels like both. Then it's your turn. The drum passes to your lap, you freeze, they look at you with expectation, not pressure, but invitation. So you take a breath. You tell a story, maybe one from your own world, maybe one you just make up on the spot. It doesn't matter. They nod, they laugh. They believe you, or at least pretend to, and that's enough. Dot, after the last story, silence settles in like a blanket. People rise slowly, drifting off into the night. You linger by the dying fire, the embers glowing like old secrets. The dog is asleep again, beside you. Brynhild winks on her way past. You stay just a minute longer, watching the waves slide in and out like the tide's breathing. Dot. It's hard to remember the aches in your shoulders when your heart feels this full. The fire has long since faded to a red-orange glow, and the drumming is just an echo now, tucked into your memory like the warmth of a finished meal. Most of the village has retired into the longhouses or disappeared into the folds of the dark, and the air has taken on that unmistakable northern crispness that whispers, "Hope you brought an extra blanket." But before you can dream of crawling back into your itchy straw bed, someone grabs your elbow. "You," says a familiar voice, it's Freydis, the three-fingered fish gutting legend from earlier. You're coming with me. You nod automatically. You've stopped questioning orders in this place. If someone points, you walk. If someone hands you a knife, you start cutting. If someone invites you to a mysterious nighttime errand, well, you sign and hope it doesn't involve anything with tentacles. She leads you along a narrow path behind the longhouse, away from the fire pits and goat pens, into a darker part of the village bordered by low stone walls and a handful of twisted birch trees that look like they've been arguing with the wind for centuries. At the end of the path, a squat turf-covered hut squats like a toad among the stones. Smoke curls from a tiny vent at the top. Freitas knocks once, then ducks inside. Without waiting for a reply, you follow, stooping low to squeeze through the doorway. Inside, the air is thick, humid, and pungent. Bundles of herbs hang from the ceiling like sleepy bats. A small fire crackles in a stone basin in the middle of the room, and beside it sits the village healer. She's older than Freitas, wrapped in layer upon layer of wool and fur, and hunched so deeply that her head nearly touches her knees. Her fingers are long and bent, knuckles like pebbles under her skin. Her eyes, though sharp, bright, practically glowing. She grunts, looks you over once, and says, "Sit." You sit. Freitas begins explaining that your hands look raw, your joints are stiff, and you've been squinting at fish bones like a cursed chicken all day. You nod, mildly offended but unable to argue. The healer reaches into a nearby basket and pulls out what looks like a clump of lichen, a wad of moss, and a sharp bone. She begins mashing them together with a stone pestle, adding a splash of something that smells like burned apples and regret. This is going to be applied to your skin. She gestures to your hands. You hold them out. She starts smearing the mixture across your knuckles with surprising tenderness, muttering under her breath not words exactly, but a melody of sound that's part hum, part hiss. The paste is cold at first, then warm, then itchy, then cold again. You glance at Freitas. "This ... normal?" She nods. "Better than goat spit?" Last year's cure. Historians still debate how much of Viking healing was practical herbal medicine versus ceremonial ritual. But when a moss-covered woman starts whispering to your hands while lighting herbs on fire, you stop needing hard definitions. Next, she checks your back with a prod, using a carved stick shaped like a fish tail. She doesn't ask you to remove your shirt, just lifts it up and squints. "Aha," she says, which is never comforting. She hands you a small bundle of dried bark and says to chew it tomorrow. "Spine problems," she mutters. "Dream too heavy." You want to ask what that means, but wisely choose not to. Before you leave, she gives you a small jar sealed with wax. "For your legs," she says. "Rub it in at night, but not near fire. Smells flammable." You bow awkwardly. "Thank you." She grunts. Freitas nods toward the door, and you follow her out into the cool night. Back in the open air, you can breathe again. The village is almost completely silent now. A few torches flicker in the distance, and somewhere you hear the soft grunt of a sleeping pig. The stars above look clearer pinpricks of light on a velvet curtain. You pause, still holding the little jar, your hands coated in dried healer paste that smells faintly of fennel and swamp. Freitas looks at you. "It's good, you know, getting seen by her." You nod. "Feels like I just got judged by a mossy oracle." She smiles. "Exactly." You walk together a while longer. The dog from earlier joins you halfway, tail wagging, tongue lolling, as if it too has passed its herbal examination. Phratis leaves you near the longhouse. "Rest," she says, and then disappears into the night like a surprisingly spry ghost. You step back inside, careful not to wake the already sleeping bodies arranged along the wall. The embers in the hearth are glowing faintly, and someone has hung a damp sock too close to the flame. It hisses softly, steaming like a sad little kettle. You find your straw bed. It's still cold, still lumpy, but it's yours. Kind of you. Sit down and rub the ointment into your legs, just as instructed. It smells like pine and possibly anchovy. You lie back. The paste tingles. You pull your cloak up over your chest and tuck your toes in tightly to conserve every bit of heat dot just as your eyes begin to close. The door creaks open. A head pokes in. "Brynhild, you're on night watch duty tomorrow," she whispers. "You?" Blink at her. "Why?" She shrugs. "You're new." And then she's gone again. You stare at the ceiling for a moment. One of the beams above you has a crack shaped like a fish. You close your eyes. You sleep. Sort of Dot, it's the kind of sleep you fall into like a stone into a fjord, deep, dark, cold, and dreamless. At some point someone rolls over and elbows your ribs. A child cries briefly in the distance. Someone snores a rhythm that sounds suspiciously like ship oars slapping water. But you don't move. You barely breathe. You're no longer a person, just a lumpy, salt-crusted entity curled beneath a damp wool cloak. Dot. When dawn creeps back in, it does so with the subtlety of a goat in a pantry. A rooster crows loudly right outside the longhouse. You open your eyes and immediately regret it. Your body has staged a rebellion. Every joint feels as though it's been individually insulted. Your arms ache, your neck's at a weird angle, and your legs are somewhere between cramping and please amputate. And today, of course, is the day of the village fire gathering. You didn't ask for this role, but since you've survived a full day here, people are beginning to look at you like you belong. It's flattering in a "please help us lift this" incredibly heavy log sort of way. You shuffle out of bed, wrap your cloak tighter around yourself, and follow the slow drift of villagers toward the center of the square, where a new fire is being lit. A proper one. A celebratory one. A storytelling, throat-warming, honor the gods kind of fire. Dot. At the heart of the fire pit is a slab of stone blackened from years of heat encircled by a ring of upright stones. Someone's added fresh pine branches around the base, and a young girl sprinkles dried herbs over them like she's feeding the flames a salad. You glance up. Brynhild is already there. She tosses you an apple. Dot. An apple. In this climate. You stare at it like she's handed you gold. "Trade route," she says. "Don't ask too many questions." You nod and sink your teeth into it. It's small, tart, slightly bruised, and easily the best thing you've tasted since arriving. The elder who presides over the fire circle appears next barefoot, bald except for one stubborn patch of hair, and wearing a cloak stitched with faded embroidery that may once have depicted wolves or very confident goats. He steps into the circle and raises his arms. The villagers quiet instantly. He begins to speak in the old tongue, and while you don't understand most of it, the cadence is comforting. His voice rises and falls like a tide, and the words carry weight, not just meaning, but memory. The fire flares up, the pine crackles. Smoke spirals into the gray morning like a message. Then the stories begin. You've already witnessed the casual kind shared around fish racks and fire pits. But this is different, formal, sacred. Each tale told with reverence and rhythm, gestures and pauses in all the right places. The first story is about a fisherman who went blind after seeing the sun rise too fast. He spent the rest of his life learning to hear fish underwater. He could tell the size of a cod by the echo of its tail against rock. Or so the tale says. The second tale involves a sea witch, a stolen cloak, and a man who married his own cousin after a confusing series of shape-shifting events. The moral is unclear, but everyone nods solemnly. You're pulled into the rhythm of it. It's less about the logic and more about the feeling, like a lullaby made from memories. Someone beside you leans over and whispers, "Do you want to see something cursed?" You don't know what the right answer is, so you say always. They pass you a carved object round, with teeth etched into one side and tiny runes along the rim. It's unsettling in the way that only well-loved things can be. You hold it carefully. What is it? Stormcaller, they say. Found it after that strange thunder last spring. We don't use it, but we keep it close. You hand it back, carefully. Historians still argue whether Norse objects like this had ritual power or were simply decorative charms taken very seriously. Either way, no one here is risking disrespect. Eventually, the formal tailies wind down, and people begin to drift toward food again. This time it's roasted turnips and soft cheese, a luxury. The turnips are caramelized from slow coals, and the cheese is sharp, tangy, possibly from a sheep who has seen things. As you're chewing your second skewer, a boy runs into the square shouting. They're back. You sit up straighter. Turns out a small boat crew went out before dawn searching for a lost net or maybe a better haul. They've returned not just with fish, but with a story. Apparently, a pod of orcas followed their boat for nearly a mile, circling it like guardians or omens, depending on who's telling it. The young men swear they saw one break the surface, with something in its mouth, a seal, maybe, or a fish, or a carved stick with a face. The village buzzes with interpretation. Orcas are rare this close to shore. Some take it as a sign of luck, others a warning. One woman insists it's her dead husband. Returned to check on the harvest? That's not questioned. The older storyteller walks over to the boat and places a palm on its hull. He closes his eyes. No words, just silence. Then he walks away again, and just like that, the discussion is over. For now, the rest of the day feels slower, gentler. People move with a little more care, speak a little softer. Even the animals seem calmer. You help carry firewood. You stack baskets. You sew a tear in someone's tunic with a fishbone needle, and vaguely hope it doesn't give them tetanus. You find yourself humming a tune you don't remember learning. The dog naps in your shadow. You feel ... still, until someone taps your shoulder and says, "Hope you napped. It's time for your watch." Of course it is. Night watch. The very phrase carries an air of grim responsibility, like you're about to stand on a wall and defend the village from dragons. But no dragons are coming tonight, just wind, shadows, and the long, slow ache of staying awake in absolute darkness. You're given a torch, a dull spear, and a cup of something hot that tastes faintly of mint and despair. A man named Rurik, who has the personality of cold stone and the posture to match, walks you to the cliffside post with the slow solemnity of a funeral march. The lookout point is less a tower and more a wide ledge perched over the fjord. A wooden platform has been nailed into the rock, just sturdy enough to hold 2 people and possibly 1 goat, though no one recommends that combination any more after the incident. Rurik grunts as he drops onto the bench and gestures for you to sit beside him. You do, placing your torch into the metal sconce drilled into the rock. It flares against the wind and crackles like it disapproves of your life choices. You watch. "The water," Rurik says. You nod. "And if I see something?" He shrugs. "Yell." That's the full training. He pulls his cloak tight and immediately closes his eyes. You blink. "Are you sleeping?" "Resting," he replies without opening them. "Watch the water." So you do. The wind is steady but not cruel tonight. The water below glimmers faintly under a sky that's cleared just enough to let the stars breathe. You can see the lights of other villages in the distant, small, flickering candles along the coastline, as if the land itself has freckles. The village behind you is quiet now, all sound swallowed by the night. Somewhere a wolf howls, or maybe just a really dramatic dog. You can't tell anymore. The torch spits occasionally. The heat doesn't reach your fingers. Time passes strangely here. It doesn't tick or chime. It sighs. It rustles. It waits. You scan the water, your eyes adjusting to the deep, shifting blues and grays of the sea. Every now and then a wave slaps the rock with a sleepy thud. Nothing dramatic. No orcas, no rival raiders. Just the eternal rhythm of tide and time. Still, you stay sharp. Or as sharp as someone with sore knees and seaweed soup in their bloodstream can manage. And then, movement. Far out near the edge of the bay, something breaks the surface. A ripple. A flash of white. You sit upright, heart thudding. Is it an animal? A boat? A trick of the light? You squint. The shape vanishes, then appears again, farther left. Rurik opens one eye. Problem? Something's out there. He stands with a groan, walks to the edge of the platform, and peers into the darkness. Then he nods. Seal. You sag in your seat. You're sure? He grunts. Or a drowned spirit. Either way, not our problem, unless it sings. Wait. Sings? Rurik smirks faintly. Only if it wants to steal your name. He sits again and resumes his nap. You blink at him, wondering if that was a joke or a warning. Historians still argue whether Viking watchmen truly believed in sea spirits or simply used the stories to stay awake and entertain themselves. Here on the cliff, where the air is thin, and the night is thick with stories, it's hard to draw the line. An hour passes. Then another. You pace the platform. You stretch your arms. You hum old songs under your breath to stay alert. Your mind drifts to the healer's hut, to the taste of the apple, to the feeling of community that's begun to wrap itself around you like wool against the wind. You don't belong here. Not really. And yet you do. It's the kind of belonging that doesn't require credentials, just effort, shared work, mutual survival. At one point, the torch sputters out. You relight it with a bit of dry moss from a pouch, and it flares back to life, casting long shadows across the cliff face. Rurik sits up again. Almost done, he says. Anything ever actually happen during night watch? He considers. Once. A bear. You straighten. It tripped into the fish racks. Took 3 days to get the smell out. Did it attack anyone? No, just the fish. You laugh softly. He looks over at you. Not bad for a first watch. Didn't fall asleep. Didn't scream at a seal. Didn't set yourself on fire. High bar. Higher than some. He stands, stretches with a crack of joints that echo like a snapping sail. Come on, let's trade out. You follow him back along the path toward the village. A new pair passes you on the trail, one young, one old, both yawning. You nod as you pass, the way people do when they've seen the same moon and shared the same fatigue. The longhouse is still dark, but a few embers glow in the hearth. You slip inside quietly, strip off your outer cloak, and drop into your straw, bedding with a sigh that leaves your whole body. The torchlight is still in your eyes. The wind is still in your ears. But the village is behind you now, wrapped around itself like a cat settling in. You close your eyes, and this time you really sleep. When you wake, it's not to shouting or smoke or another goat invasion, just soft morning light filtering in through the cracks in the longhouse walls, and the slow rustle of people beginning to stir. Someone's boiling water over the hearth, and it smells faintly of pine needles and juniper berries. A rare treat. Maybe even an accident. You stretch cautiously, half expecting your spine to rebel. But aside from the usual soreness and a mystery bruise on your thigh, shaped like a shell, you're mostly intact. Progress dot outside, the village is already waking up. Children dart between houses, chasing each other with sticks. One of them is pretending to be a sea monster and doing a fairly convincing job of it. A woman near the smokehouse shouts a cheerful insult at a man carrying a basket of wood, and he responds with a grin that's mostly teeth and dirt. You're called to the smokehouse to help with fish preservation because of course you are. Rest is for the goats. The smokehouse is a low, dark hut built of stone and driftwood, with a narrow entrance and almost no ventilation. Inside, the air is thick with haze. Your eyes water immediately. You blink and blink again, but visibility is optional in here. A woman named Asa, who seems to have been born in smoke and salt, hands you a bundle of fish on a spit. These go up, she says, gesturing to the hooks along the ceiling. You nod, and try to hang them properly, but the wooden frame creaks ominously under your weight. You lean back, the spit slips, and one of the fish smacks you square in the face. Asa doesn't laugh. She just takes it from your hand, hangs it properly, and pats you on the shoulder. Takes a few days. You'll learn. Maybe. Or maybe the fish will keep slapping you until you figure out who angered, Nerd, and why it keeps falling on you. Historians still debate whether Viking smokehouses were communal structures or private family operations. In this village, it seems like both. Everyone helps. Everyone complains. No one leaves until they reek like a campfire wrapped in seaweed dot after an hour. Your clothes are infused with smoke so deeply that you suspect they may become flammable. Your hair smells like toasted herring. Your eyes are red. But the fish are slowly transforming glossy skins drying out, fats rendering down into salty resilience. This is winter food. The stuff that keeps you alive when the fjord ices over and fishing becomes a game of hope you don't fall through. You exit into the open air like a mole seeing daylight for the first time. You cough. You sneeze. You blink at the sun, and someone throws a bucket of seawater over you. You yelp, Dot, it's Brynhild. You smelled like a ghost, she says, grinning. Now you just smell like a wet ghost. You chase her for half a second before realizing you'll never catch her on these rocks. She laughs and vanishes around the longhouse, victorious and dry. You head toward the drying racks instead, where more fish await stringing. Your fingers are stiff and smoked, but you work anyway. The repetition is soothing. Thread, tie, hang. Repeat. Your hands move almost on their own now. A boy next to you asks if you know how to make a fish whistle. You blink. A what? He holds up a cod skull with a small reed stuck into one of the eye sockets. He blows into it. It makes a sound like a duck being stepped on. You laugh. He beams. I call it the sea caller. You try it, it squeals horribly. A seagull overhead actually startles and flaps away. The boy nods, impressed. You're good at this. You add fish whistling to your growing list of Viking skills, just under smelling like salt forever and surviving soup. Later, you join a group hauling barrels toward the salt hut again. Some are filled with fish. Others contain what might generously be called fish adjacent. Guts, heads, the occasional eyeball. These bits don't go to waste. They're used for bait, rendered for oil, or in some mysterious cases medicine. Someone swears that boiled fish eye mixed with moss helps with night vision. Someone else swears it causes vivid dreams about being eaten by eels. No one agrees. Everyone keeps using it anyway. The salt master, a man with 3 teeth and more confidence than should be legal, shows you how to layer the contents. Salt, fish, more salt. He does this while singing a surprisingly catchy tune about a walrus who fell in love with a fisherman's boots. You help, humming along by the second verse. It's hard not to dot as the barrels are sealed. You're told they'll be stored in a cool pit beneath the longhouse. This apparently keeps them safe from spirits and foxes. You don't question it. The spirits have been mentioned too, often to ignore, and foxes here are either extremely bold or unervingly clever. By late afternoon, your hands are cracked and your fingernails permanently scented like brine. You take a break by the water and skip rocks. One bounces 3 times. Before sinking, the dog sits beside you again. Your silent, smelly companion. You notice a wooden carving left near the tide line. A simple figure with wide eyes and a fish tail. Someone's left an offering of herbs and a shell beside it. You don't touch it. You just watch the tide creep, close, then pull away. Historians still argue whether these shoreline idols were household gods, elemental spirits, or carved warnings left for the sea. But here, in this moment, you feel their presence less supernatural and more remembered. Like echoes in wood, you sigh, stand, and head back toward the village. On the way, a girl hands you a small cloth bundle. Inside, a biscuit, dry, crumbly, flavored with something sweet. You take a bite. It's made with honey. Real honey. A luxury if ever there was one. You're too stunned to speak. The girl just smiles and runs off. The biscuit is gone in 3 bites. You savor each one, and as the sun tilts low again, casting long shadows across the village and painting the fjord, in soft, bruised hues, you feel it settle into your bones. You've made it through another day. Evening doesn't announce itself here, it simply arrives, slipping down over the village like a woolen shawl pulled across tired shoulders. The warmth of the sun fades without apology, and the cold hum of the fjord takes its place. Fires are lit again, not for cooking this time, but for light, for comfort, and to keep away the creeping sense that something might be watching just beyond the birch trees. You're summoned, not asked, summoned to help preserve another load of fish. This time it's the less glamorous part, the salt-smoke combo that involves standing over warm coals and inhaling about 3 pounds of briny fog until your eyelashes feel crunchy. You arrive at the covered shed where this happens. It's not quite indoors, not quite outdoors, just enough of a structure to trap smoke and make you sweat. The racks are strung with rows of fish, all shimmering slightly in the low firelight. Someone hands you a long-handled fan made from woven reeds and says, "Keep the air moving, no swirling, just wave," like you're scolding a lazy crow. That is somehow both confusing and helpful. You begin waving. The smoke curls around your ankles and climbs your tunic like ivy. It smells like every campfire you've ever sat beside, plus the unforgettable bouquet of decaying cod. Your eyes sting, your lips taste like sea salt, and your shoulders are still sore from carrying barrels earlier. You wave slowly, consistently, like a sleepy metronome. Beside you, an older man hums tunelessly while turning fish on hooks with a small forked stick. Every few minutes he mutters something to himself, maybe a recipe, maybe a curse. Hard to say. He glances over at you. "You've lasted longer than I expected." You raise an eyebrow. That a compliment. He shrugs. "More than bark?" He cried during his 3rd day. Said the fish were too judgmental. You grin. "I've seen worse." He nods. "You've become worse." Then he laughs, a dry wheeze that turns into a cough, and goes back to his turning. After about an hour of smoking, waving, and losing the upper layers of your lungs, you're dismissed. You stumble into the open air, blinking, reeking, and mildly dizzy. You lie down on the nearest patch of grass and just breathe. The sky above is bruised purple, stars winking into place like someone poked holes in the firmament. Then you hear it. Music. It's not loud, not formal, but it draws you in. You follow the sound to a gathering near the boatworks, a wide, low platform where most of the repairs are done. Tonight it's become a dance floor. Torches flicker around the edges, casting long shadows. A small group of musicians, if that's the right word, are playing handmade instruments. A single drum, a carved flute, and something that looks like a harp, but sounds like a creaky door with rhythm. People are dancing. Some do it well. Most don't, but no one seems to care. You're handed a drink, you sip it. It's sweeter than usual, like someone melted down dried fruit and forgot to measure. Brynhild appears beside you. "Dance?" You laugh. "I've been standing for 16 hours. She grabs your wrist anyway. That's not a no. And suddenly you're moving. Not gracefully, not stylishly, but with enough enthusiasm to count. The music lifts you just enough to forget the bruises on your knees, the fish oil in your hair, and the fact that your hands still smell like a shipwreck You spin. You trip. Someone catches you. You catch someone else. Laughter rings through the night like sleigh bells on the sea. The drum speeds up. The fire pops. Someone does a backflip and lands directly in a barrel of rainwater. The crowd erupts with applause. He bows from inside the barrel. Historians still argue whether these dances served a social function, a religious purpose, or were simply stress relief disguised as tradition. In this moment, it doesn't matter. It's human. It's necessary. It's the opposite of gutting fish in silence. Eventually, the music slows. People drift toward the edges of the gathering, panting and glowing. Someone starts passing out slices of dried apple and small wedges of soft cheese. You chew both slowly, surprised at the subtle sweetness. Surprised at how hungry you still are. You sit near the edge of the platform, watching as embers rise into the sky. The stars are clearer now, clustered in loose shapes that almost make sense. Someone claims to see a ship, another sees a bear. You see a fish. Of course, Brynhild plops down beside you, slightly breathless. You're not terrible at dancing. Thank you, you say. I aim for not terrible in everything I do. She nudges your shoulder. That's very ambitious of you. A long silence stretches between you, not awkward, just comfortable. Like you've both run out of things to say, and that's fine. Then she asks, what would you do if you didn't have to do anything? You think for a while. Sleep for a week, then maybe make better soup. She laughs. That's the most reasonable answer I've ever heard. You lie back and stare at the stars. The wind is softer now. The dog finds you again, curls at your side like you're a piece of furniture it's claimed. Your bones still ache. Your hands are stiff, but your heart feels steady. Across the square, the last dancer spins alone, hair flying, feet bare, completely. Unbothered by whether anyone is watching, you close your eyes, and if you dream, it's of silver fish and fires that never go out. You wake to bird song and a distant, persistent banging two things that sound suspiciously like someone else's problem, until a voice calls your name and reminds you that, no, it's yours. You groan and roll off the straw bed, your body creaking. Like an old ship, the dog lifts its head from the floor beside you and sighs in sympathy. Today, you've been assigned to the cliffside post again, but not for watch duty this time. No, today you're helping repair one of the wind shelters. A small, semicircular stone nook where night lookouts huddle. When the wind tries to peel your skin off. You trudge up with two others. One is Rurik again, grumbling as always, and the other is a teenage girl with a hammer nearly as big as her arm and a fearless glint in her eye. She's introduced as Ilsa, and she wastes no time calling Rurik old mossback and asking how many bones he intends to break today. He mutters something about respect and young fools with nails, but starts working anyway. The damage is clear. Half the shelter wall collapsed during the last storm. The stones must be hauled back into place, one by one, like a Viking version of the world's saddest puzzle. Your job is simple. Don't get crushed. You sweat. You strain. You curse. Quietly, because Rurik is still watching. But eventually the wall takes shape again. You wedge moss and clay between stones to keep the wind from finding its way in. Rurik gives a rare grunt of approval. Ilse spits on a rock and calls it blessed. Historians still argue whether these tiny cliffside shelters were standard features or improvised luxuries in fishing villages. Either way, after 2 hours of hauling sea-worn stone in the biting wind, you vote for necessity. After the repairs, you head back down, hands aching, only to be intercepted by the salt master. Again. This time he needs help moving barrels into the underground store. You nod. Of course he does. The storage pit lies under a trapdoor near the longhouse, a low, musty chamber carved out of the rock. It's cool, dry, and dimly lit by a single oil lamp that sputters as you descend the creaking ladder. Your job, stack the barrels in an orderly fashion, which basically means not dropping them on your foot. You work with another villager named Thorkel, who speaks little but hums constantly mostly. About ducks. Not songs about ducks, just sounds like ducks. You don't ask Dot at one point. He gestures to a barrel and says, "Don't touch that one." Why not? It hisses. You give it a wide berth. Later, you finally catch a break. You're led to the side of the village where the nets are repaired. You'd expect this to be tedious, and it is, but it's also oddly calming. You sit on a low bench in the sun, yes, actual sun, surrounded by loops of hemp and bone needles. A woman with hands like driftwood shows you how to stitch new twine into torn sections. The rhythm is slow, repetitive. Not pull, smooth, repeat. You start to zone out. The voices around you blur into a background lullaby. The waves murmur in the distance. The dog naps under the bench, and even your own thoughts start to soften at the edges. A boy nearby tells you he once saw a fish with 2 tails and a single eye. He swears it sang to him. You nod. You've stopped. Questioning anything here, dot, not, pull, smooth. Someone offers you a bit of dried fruit and goat cheese. You take it. It tastes of sharpness and sunshine. Time becomes abstract. Eventually, the mended nets are folded and stacked. You stretch your back, which cracks in 6 distinct places. You've stopped hoping for comfort. Now you just hope for survivability. Evening rolls in with little fanfare. The wind picks up again, but softly this time, more a sigh than a slap. Fires are lit. You join the others near the communal hearth, where someone is heating flatbread over stones. You're handed a piece. It's warm. It's got actual herbs in it. You nearly cry. Tonight's stories are less formal, more meandering. Someone describes a dream they had about a whale that spoke Latin. Another claims to have seen lights under the water that spelled a name they didn't recognize. A third retells the time a merchant tried to pay for a cloak with a handful of beetles. No one questions the logic. The truth here is elastic, like wool in the rain. What matters is the telling, not the fact-checking. You sip something sweet from a carved cup and lean back against a pile of fish baskets. Your shoulders still ache, your feet are still damp, and your hands are permanently scented like ocean life, but your heart is quiet. Brynhild flops down beside you again. I heard you rebuilt the wall with help. Still counts. She tosses you something wrapped in cloth. You open it. It's a small carved charm, a fishtail wrapped around a tiny human heart. It fits in your palm like it was made for you. You earned it, she says casually. Every villager gets one eventually. You just got yours quicker. You don't know what to say, Dot. She stands, brushing off her knees. Keep it close. It remembers things for you. You close your hand around it. It's warm from her pocket, from her story, from the moment itself. Around you the fire crackles. The sky darkens again. Another day and the village folds shut like a net pulled from the sea, Dot, and for the first time you feel like you're part of the catch, not just visiting, not surviving, but belonging. The wind has shifted again. You feel it before you hear it, cold fingers slipping under your cloak, tugging at your sleeves, playing with the edges of your hood like a bored spirit. It's time to return to the longhouse, Dot. You move slowly now. Not from pain, though yes, still plenty of that, but from something else, a quiet reverence. The kind that settles in once you've realized you're no longer a guest. The longhouse glows from within, a soft orange halo leaking through its gaps. You step inside and are greeted by warmth, by the low murmur of voices, by the smell of charred wood, wool, and whatever they've managed to cook tonight. You're not expecting anything fancy, probably more dried fish or moss broth, but you find a small clay bowl waiting for you near the hearth. You lift the lid. Inside, a root stew with pieces of actual meat, a few wild greens, even wait a single sliver of something that might be onion. You glance around, confused. The healer catches your eye from across the room. She nods once. You realize this is a gift, a reward, a very subtle Viking thumbs up. You're being fed like someone who matters. You eat slowly, savoring every bite like it's treasure, which, to be fair, it is. Someone starts singing again, soft this time, a lullaby with no lyrics, just vowels stretched over a familiar rhythm, the kind of tune that soothes the bones more than the mind. It wraps around the longhouse like smoke, like fog, like the tide. You sit back. Your fingers toy absently with the charm Brynhild gave you, fish tail, heart. You can't tell if it's supposed to bring protection or just serve as a reminder. You were here. You lived this. You earned this, Dot. The fire dims to embers. One by one, people begin lying down, wrapping themselves in blankets, tucking in children, muttering soft good nights. The dog takes its place near the doorway, curling into a perfect ball of shaggy comfort. You lie down too. The straw beneath you is still uneven, still itchy. Your muscles still ache, but tonight it feels different. Not like punishment, more like proof. You've worked. You've lasted, Dot, and tomorrow you'll do it again. You close your eyes. The longhouse creaks in the wind. The sea moans faintly in the distance. Someone murmurs a final blessing to Thor or Njord, or maybe just the stars. And the last thing you remember before sleep finally pulls you under is that you didn't just survive the Viking fishing village. You became part of it, Dot, and now, as the firelight fades and the chill of the fjord settles into the stone walls, you find yourself wrapped in a stillness that feels earned. The village sleeps. The sea sighs. And your breath slower now rises and falls in rhythm with it all. You've carried nets and buckets, endured storms and seal gossip, rebuilt walls and strung up fish until your fingers forgot what clean felt like. You've eaten strange soups, chewed leather-like herring, and somehow made peace with the smell of smoke and seaweed becoming your new signature scent. But more than that, you found moments, small, fleeting ones of unexpected warmth. Laughter beside the drying racks, a joke whispered in the smokehouse, an apple traded like gold, a charm given not out of ceremony, but connection. So let the sound of waves ease you now. Let the memory of that drum beat the one they used to. Call the sea spirits soften your breath. Let your shoulders, heavy with salt and sun and the weight of effort, finally rest. Because for just a while you don't have to fish. You don't have to row. You don't even have to understand the old stories. All you have to do is drift, gently, slowly, like a boat unmoored, rocking in calm tide under a quiet northern sky. The fire crackles its last, the wind sings low, and everything that needs doing can wait. Sleep now, Viking. You've earned it. Sweet dreams.